Welcome to my podcast, Therese Makes History, the Dairy Lane Project, Season 2, where we have 10 episodes. I'm launching episode 9 today. We're going to be in Schofields Lane. I've got a bit of territory to cover in the introduction, so bear with me. John Schofield was deported from England as a convict in 1821. He was an Anglican Englishman, but he used to get orphans to steal for him. He himself stole a whole roll of silk. He was allotted to a farming family on arrival, squatters named Harley. Now, 8 years later, John married the squatter's daughter, Bridget Harley, in April 1829. Actually, from there, Schofields, the suburb in northwest Sydney, is named after the Schofield family. They are the founders of that suburb. Now, this information has come from Pam Schofield, who grew up in Schofields Lane. Pam has actually written a book on the family, and a bit of this information comes from Pam. I'm going to log her book as part of the archive with the library at Nowra. Now, together John and Bridget had 6 sons and 6 daughters, so yes, 12 children. One of his sons was named Samuel. Now, Samuel and another brother went with John to the gold rush in California. Apparently they made a fortune, but the ship on the return ran aground at Lawhale Island and they lost all their gold. John must have done all right on his return to have the suburb named after the family. Now, Samuel James established some market gardens around Rockdale, and they went into butchering. Samuel James was born in 1831. He married Grace Retelack, who was born in 1838. Now, they're the parents of Albert. Now, Albert was the butcher in Berry. Albert was born in 1863. Albert James Schofield, who married Elizabeth Jane Dowling, who was born in 1867. Part of the purchase of the butcher shop in Berry was also slaughter yards, located in the land now known as Schofields Lane, 188 acres. The slaughter yards came with the butcher shop. Now, Elizabeth's father was Robert George Dowling. Just a bit of information here. He was a stonemason and a builder who was part of the building team for the University of Sydney and David Jones, to name a few key sites. Albert and his wife had 6 children: Philip, Ken, Bill, Doris, Edna and Grace. Their eldest son, Philip, dairy farmed in Schofields Lane. He had 20 to 30 cows. His daughter Pam remembers standing on the slide to go to the milk truck with the cans. They bred jerseys for butter and cheese, and their milk went to the Berry Co-op. Across the road, George Williams farmed. Now, Phil had 3 children, Pam and Bill, and then Colin after World War II. Philip was born in 1909 and he married Kathleen Annie Bennett Caton. She was born in 1914. Philip returned from army training in Townsville, but he never went to World War II. And then he worked for the railways up until his death in 1947, where he died of appendicitis. Pam was 10, Bill was 8, and Colin was 2. So Kathleen was a widow with a young family. Philip's siblings sold the property fairly much under Kathleen. Philip's siblings sold the property for £6,000 and it was split 6 ways. Kathleen received £1,000. She moved to Huskisson with their children and ran a haberdashery shop, and she raised her 3 children. Pam ended up going to teacher's training at Wagga, and then she taught at Dapto Primary. She's 88 years of age today. Bill is 86. Bill dairied for Grace, his auntie, who'd married Bob Giles, who dairy farmed on 100 acres at Piree, and he remembers earning £6 a week and board. Then he share farmed with Lenny King at Far Meadow for 2 years. He was about 21 years old then. Bill married Iris Jarrett from Roselands, Kangaroo Valley, now known as Jarrett's Lane. It was their second marriage for both, and they married in 1953. Iris was one of 8 children. Her father, John William Jarrett, known as Jack, was one of 12 children. Her mum was Winifred Jane Good. Now, I'm going to do a recording with Bill and Iris down the track, so they can be archived. I've only just found them. Now, Bill settled on Maru Road, Bomaderry, and established initially a milk run, and then he set up W.J. Schofields Fertiliser Company at 26 years of age. He ran that company for 44 years, and he retired at age 70. Now I'm getting closer to what today's recording is going to be about, and of course, I'll give you a hint. The Department of Agriculture purchased the 186 acres between Anderson Lane and Hitchcock's Lane in the 1950s, what we know as Schofields Lane today, to establish Graham Park. It was established here off the highway on the northern side. It cost the Department of Agriculture £200,000, moving it from Wharf Road, Bury, where it was established and purchased for £10,000, but had become too small. Now I'm going to read directly from the book written by Bailey that places us in this period of time in history. Page 206, in the chapter The Milky Way, paragraph 4. Another agency for farm progress was the Bury Experiment Farm, opened near the river beside the road to Coolangatta in October 1899. Being the first of its kind on the coast. It continued under the Department of Agriculture until in April 1934 it was taken over by the Child Welfare Department. It was remodelled with the provision of dining room, dormitories and other facilities, with cottages to house 40 boys to take farm training. It was opened by the Minister for Education, Honourable D.H. Drummond, on October 11, 1935. It became the venue for the 3rd annual Field Day of the South Coast and Tablelands Junior Farmers Clubs. Additional buildings were added, together with more modern farming facilities. In 1939, the area was beautified under the management of P. Waller, who retired from the superintendency in 1944 after 17 years' outstanding success. He was followed by F. Sims. The next paragraph. An innovation of an unusual kind was the establishment on November 17, 1944, of the Bury Better Farming League to encourage greater milk production, sponsored by A.N. Binks, MLC. It began with N.K. Stewart as president, its first activity being a pasture improvement competition. It urged the establishment of an artificial stock breeding centre from its earliest times and included in its aims the promotion of social, cultural and economic conditions, education, roads, water, electricity and price stabilisation. It conducted field days, tours of inspection, lectures and demonstrations by eminent men. F.A. McIntosh became president and L.P. Higgins secretary, each serving many years. The League flourished and gave a lead in New South Wales. A notable leader in the work was A.N. Binks of Linwood, Broughton Village, who was presented with a testimonial in 1952 to mark his work as patron. He also served as chairman of the Dairy Farmers Milk Company for over 20 years and chairman of the Bury Rural Cooperative Society. He died in 1953 after success in the milk industry, having lived all his life at Broughton Village. One of the outstanding results of the representations of the Bury Better Farming League was that establishment of the artificial stock breeding station at Bury, serving the whole of the Shoalhaven district. First proposed in 1947, it cost £10,000 to establish, including erection of buildings, yards and purchase of stock. It was opened by the Minister for Agriculture, Honourable E. H. Graham, MLA, on October 17, 1952. Rapid advances made construction of a larger station necessary, and after construction at a cost of £200,000, it was opened as Graham Park beside the Princes Highway south of Berry by the Premier of New South Wales, J.J. Cahill, on February 10, 1958. It has resulted in the breeding of a better class of stock with consequent increase in milk production and quality. Now I'm going to go a bit more into A.N. Binks and Mr. McIntosh, just so you get to know a little bit more about them. Alfred Noble Binks was born in 1873 at Broughton Creek. He died, as the book says, in July 1953 at David Berry Hospital. His father, Thomas Binks, migrated from England in 1860. He was born in Norfolk in 1834. Thomas married Mary Hetherington at Boat Harbour, Gerringong, in 1865. Mary was born Methodist in 1836, Ireland. Alfred was one of 11 children. Alfred's influence to the local dairying industry cannot be ignored, especially in the first part of the 20th century. I've looked at a few press articles. I'm referring to an article in 1933 when they ran a field day at the Berry Experimental Farm, ran by P. Waller. It was all about pasture improvement and analysing revenue. Mr. Binks spoke there on the importance of pasture improvement as related to the dairy industry in the coastal areas. While much was done at places like Berry Experimental Farm, much still remained for the research worker to discover, he says. It was of the greatest importance that the work of testing and breeding of strains of various grasses be pursued until it was felt that the most suitable type was discovered for each district. Mr. Binks praised the work being done by the Plant Foods Advisory Committee in assisting generally to spread the gospel of pasture improvement among private farmers. He was a strong believer in ploughing up the old matted paspalum and sowing down the permanent pasture of rye and clovers, and top-dressing these liberally with lime and fertilisers to supply the essential soil elements removed by years of grazing. So that was just part of a 2-page article on the experimental farm that the Shoalhaven News and South Coast District Advisor printed. There's also an article in 1935 on the Berry Junior Farmers League, which was started up. The newly formed Club of Berry has made an excellent start, with a membership of 38. So projects have been taken up as follows: calf rearing, gardening, poultry raising, maize and potato growing. In addition, all members are interested in cattle judging. Who was present at their first meeting? The following junior office bearers were elected: President Max Bowden, Vice Presidents Ed Foreman and Clyde Parrish, Secretary and Treasurer Gwen Chegwidden. In addition to several members of the Advisory Committee, Mr. A. Rickson of the Jersey Herd Society was present, and by courtesy of Mr. E. Chidwigan gave a demonstration on judging a Jersey cow. Members were deeply interested and raised quite a number of points at question time. So a tour of inspection of projects revealed that the juniors had already made a start in their club work. At Broughton Vale, Max Bowden has his plot of potatoes planted. Ken Bowden is laying out a neat vegetable garden. Ron Bowden has a splendid clutch of white leghorn chicks. And Florrie Bowden is rearing her Jersey calf on good lines. Chas Abbott, Don Whiffen and Jack Devitt are all laying out good gardens. Fern Garrity has an attractive Ayrshire calf, whilst Betty Jouliffe has a clutch of Hawkesbury College Australorps, some type of poultry, I imagine. At Berry, Gwen Chidwigan is skillfully treating her Jersey calf during a bout of sickness. Gwen also gives promise of developing into a capable club secretary. Evelyn Biffin has been fortunate in getting a clutch of Rhode Island Reds from some of the best breed stock in New South Wales. Les Stevenson, Stan Tetley and Keith Gall have made a start in their gardens. Keith in particular has a good garden. Bob Lidbetter is a keen poultry raiser and has a clutch of high-quality Australorps. Cliff Masters, Keith and Ross Miller each have young calves for good stock. There are some very keen members in the Far Meadow section of the club. Nita Keys, Don Bishop and Ed Foreman are showing good results in calf rearing and have attractive calves with much to work. At Jasper's Brush, Owen Williams, Mervyn and Clyde Parrish, Jolt Harvey and Jack Barron have all made a start with their gardens, but have been handicapped by the dry weather. Don Barham, Millie Harvey and John Alexander are rearing calves, Don having obtained the AIS calf of high quality from the famous herd of Mr. J. Knapp, his grandfather. The Knapps are at Bowlong. As an instance of the interest in club affairs displayed by local men, mention is made of a generous gesture by Mr. A. N. Binks, who was offered to supply any town boy with a good AIS calf, together with the sum of half a guinea as a contribution towards the cost of food, so that boys living in Bury will be able to take up the calf rearing project if they so desire. That just gives you a little insight into the junior farmers in 1935. In 1947, Binks was honoured with an award for Better Farming League for making the greatest contribution to the dairying industry through the Illawarra and South Coast. The award was presented to him by the Honourable E. H. Graham, who was the Minister for Agriculture. So Graham was observing and had quite a lot of engagement down on the South Coast whilst he was Minister. There are a number of press articles in the 30s quoting Alfred Binks, and in the 40s, which goes to show you the type of person he was with that honour of an award for the Better Farming League in 1947. Binks's work was influential towards what was to come. Now we move to Fred McIntosh. Now Fred came from Cobbitty. He was born there, Frederick Andrew McIntosh, in 1903. His parents were Andrew McIntosh, who was born at Catherine Fields, and he was born in 1854, and he married Ada Fryer, who was born in 1868. They married at Parramatta in 1888. Andrew is listed as a grazier, and both Andrew and Ada lived their lives and passed at Cobbitty. Now, Fred McIntosh, in his early years, played polo. He was quite a number one polo jersey out at Cobbitty. And the McIntosh brothers at Cobbitty were also involved in breeding and exhibiting air shears, jerseys and shorthorns. They were connecting with the Camden Park Estate Company. I'll read you. At the Camden Show in 1917, the competition was keen amongst exhibitions of air shears, jerseys and shorthorns, with Camden Park Estate Company and McIntosh Brothers Cobbitty and a minto farmer, J. Clark. So the McIntoshes are mixing with Camden Park Estate, these big landowners. And Camden Park, of course, was Camden. John MacArthur, Elizabeth MacArthur were the founders of Camden Park Estate. And Camden itself had 10 dairies in the 20th century, including the famous Rhodolactor, which opened in the early 50s. You'd remember the Rhodolactor if you're a bit older. Now, I know Camden Park well because I was engaged by the Trust to undertake the 20th century history recreation for them. Ran for a number of years. It's all archived. And in 1928, at the Hawkesbury show, there was a man that stood out, a Mr. C.D. Shadlow from Fairfield, and he did well with the best cow, which was named May 3rd of Fairfield. Mr. Shadlow also won both milking competitions. One cow, Primrose of Denbigh, was purchased from the McIntosh brothers of Cobbitty, and it was a government test cow with a record of 13,800 pounds of milk in 270 days. Now, in 1931, the Camden polo season started and it opened at Cobbitty, and Fred McIntosh was on the team, and he was mixing then with the MacArthur Onslows. So they were an established family with strong connections in the dairying industry and also through sport, an elite sport, polo. In 1934, Fred's team won the cup, obviously an established horseman as well. But his father passed in 1941, and there's an article that he writes in 1946 where his address is Woodside Park, Bury. Now, in 1946, where he forms part of a delegation with the New South Wales Agricultural Minister, Mr. Graham, they're going on an international mission selecting cattle to improve the breeding on the South Coast. They were selecting Ayrshire cattle in North Scotland, he was most impressed there. The tour was a 5-week tour to the UK and Canada. He observed artificial insemination demonstrations, and he was very impressed with the quality of the pastures in Scotland. In 1947, there was a welcome home party by the Berry Farming League. Minister Graham was present also. 80 people were present. Fred said he was impressed by the Frisians, and he purchased an 11-month bull for the government, which was AI bred. The standard of air shears were better in England and Scotland compared to Australia, he said. He observed superior farm management overseas, from hay storage, hay stacking to machinery and the harnessing of horses and the leather work. They could teach us a lot in conserving fodder, he states. In 1950, Fred became president of the Better Farming League, and he announced to the farming community in the Shoalhaven that the minister was intending to open up an AI centre on the south coast. Now, before that was announced, Fred required all farmers to fill in a questionnaire to establish what sort of cattle numbers they needed at the centre, which was going to be established in Berry. So this was a major shift in cattle reproduction, introducing science to the farmer, sterility, charts, measuring output, and every cow was to be examined by a vet. Fred had developed first-hand knowledge observing latest methods overseas, key influences to establish the AI centre in Berry. Today, Fred's son Bob runs the dairy farm Woodside in Berry, and he's currently milking approximately 295 cows. It gets us to who am I interviewing today? I'm introducing David Armstrong, who was the manager of the AI Centre. What's your full name, David, and where were you born?
My full name is David Erskine Armstrong. I was born at Wollongong and reared on a dairy farm out the back of Dapto. That's where I went to primary school, and then I went away to boarding school at Helston Agricultural High School, and from there I went on to do agriculture at Hawkesbury Ag College.
That was quite a popular course, wasn't it?
Yes.
So you had to be a bit bright to do that, didn't you?
Well, probably.
Without a doubt. What year were you born and where?
I was born 6th of April 1936 at Wollongong.
What were your plans with your studies?
More my father's plans. My elder brother did exactly the same as I did. Primary school, Helston High School, Hawkesbury Ag College, and I just followed suit through those. Having been born on a dairy farm, we were agriculturally motivated.
So you were born on a dairy farm?
The back of Dapto at Avondale.
Avondale. How many cows were you milking at Avondale?
My father would have been milking probably about, vary between 70 and 90 in those days.
No doubt. Were they the Illawarra Shorthorns he was milking?
Yes, they were Illawarra Shorthorn.
Did you have much to do with that early breeding yourself as a young man?
No, none at all.
What about your dad?
Well, they were always, buying new bulls and so forth, usually from a stud at Jamberoo. That was the pattern. They didn't use artificial breeding until
after the war?
Long after.
What was your journey to Berry? Why did you come here?
I came here to work at Graham Park, Artificial Stock Breeding Centre. I started there in 1965, October, long weekend 1965 as a matter of fact. My title back then was Special Officer, and my duties mainly were breeding and buying and bringing bulls in and out and so forth. I never inseminated a cow.
What cows were you dealing with then?
We mainly were concentrating on the Frisians, the Illawarras and Jerseys, and to a lesser extent Guernseys and Ayrshires, and the odd beef bull, mainly Pole, Hereford and Angus.
How long had the centre been established before you arrived?
It basically started in 1958, So it had been going a little bit short of 10 years.
And who was running it when you arrived?
When I arrived, it was being run by the New South Wales Milk Board. The original centre was down Wharf Road, and that was operated by the Department of Agriculture. The Minister, Eddie Graham, decided that the Department of Agriculture weren't quite the body to run an artificial stock breeding centre, so he switched it over to the New South Wales Milk Board. Main reason being that the Department of Agriculture had to rely on funds from the government funds, whereas the New South Wales Milk Board developed their own funds from milk that they paid the dairy farmers for and charged the users for.
So the Milk Board, was that a private entity?
No, it was a government body with a chairman, and he was previously a Labor member of Parliament and a very, very capable man.
And do you remember the Labor minister's name?
The Labor minister was Eddie Graham, and the Premier at the time was Carl. When they started the New South Wales Milk Board, they put Jack Ferguson in as chairman. And he had been a union rep and etc., but a very, very tuned-in man. And so they set themselves up as a board with two representing the dairy farmers and one representing the consumers. So it was a board of 4 or 5. And the secretary, of course, who was the head Sherang, and that was in Sydney.
Do we have a representative here in Berry on that board, do you know, or in the region?
No, we didn't have a representative here. Later on, when the producers' reps back then, one was from up Campbelltown way and the other one was from up the north coast a bit. But a dairy farmer here, Fred McIntosh, he was basically the instigator of the artificial stock breeding being developed in Berry. He had travelled widely overseas and purchased air shears for his stud purposes. So he was instrumental with Eddie Graham, the minister, in getting the government to agree to, when the New South Wales Milk Board took it over, to acquire the 186 acres out of Berry and close the artificial one down at Wharf Road, which was not sufficiently large to expand. So in 1958, basically, the one down there closed and the new modern one, which had been designed on tours from overseas centres and so forth. Most of the publications you see, they all say it was the most modern artificial stock breeding centre in the world, which we couldn't disagree with.
Were vets involved here? Because it Dr. George Boris. Who they called him Boris, did they?
Yeah.
Did you meet him?
Oh, yeah. He and Artie McDennis, were two very good vets.
Were they he was an immigrant, was the other one?
Yeah.
What was his last name?
Medenius.
Was he from, where was he from?
He was Gerringong. I don't know, something makes me think they might have been from Hungary.
Okay, yes. After the war came over, probably.
Yeah, because we didn't have vets here.
No.
Not in any number.
No. So their contribution was what?
Well, they were basically brought in to work with their dairy factory. So Artie worked with the Berry factory, Dennis worked with the Gerringong factory, and there was another one worked with the Nara factory whose name escapes me now. As the use of artificial breeding progressed, they started to do some inseminations, but the bulk of the inseminations were done by staff from Graham Park. No, artificial breeding really started in Russia. I give credit of about 1934, and then places like Denmark and then England, a bit after that Canada and America, and about the same time as Australia and New Zealand. Advent of the AI was involved veterinary surgeons. First, New South Wales was up at the Glenfield Veterinary Research Station.
Yes.
That's where the first AI bred calf was born in Australia. And so vets from there had considerable involvement in the early days of getting the practical applications of artificial breeding going up at Glenfield. And also we had the centre up at Aberdeen in the Hunter Valley, which was run by the Hunter Valley Dairy Co-op. When the New South Wales Milk Board started out here at Graham Park, they also took over the Hunter Valley AI Centre.
Who were you dealing with in your job?
Most of my dealing was with inseminators to a degree, to give them information on the background of our bulls and the quality of the bulls.
I'll slow it down there. So the background of the bulls and the quality of the bulls. So you're buying the bulls, you're selecting them.
Yeah.
So how are you doing that?
Well, we had, for example, Fred McIntosh, the local dairyman here. Back then, a chap named Bob Auld from the Department of Agriculture. Myself, we were basically the bull selectors, so I'd go off with either Bob Auld or Fred McIntosh. The photograph there is of the three of us at a sale in Victoria. So most of my time was giving bull information to the inseminators so they could give it to the farmers. Also liaising with stud breeders to have special cows bred to special bulls, hoping we'd get a bull result.
Are you selecting bulls at sale yards?
No, we bought, I think over the time, about 2 or 3 from stud sales. The balance of them we bought from the actual breeder of them on his farm.
Would that have been locally or you're travelling for this?
Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, a few from South Australia, and a couple from New Zealand. And back there in the late 1950s, about 1956, the Department of Agriculture imported some bulls from both Canada and from England or Jersey Island. Some of them became notable bulls, particularly in the Frisian line. There was a bull, Snyder's Fondhope King.
Could you say that name again?
Snyder's Fondhope King. And there was Fraser Lord Jewel, Trail and Royal Bow, 3 notable bulls in the Frisian breed. A couple from England didn't do as well here in Australia as the Canadian bulls did. The Canadian bulls seem to be able to improve the type, size and etc. of our cattle. But we also imported Jersey from Jersey Island, the Mounts Orange Boy was his name, and a bit later Jersey from New Zealand, Maryland Gold Spot. Then we bought a Jersey bull at a sale in Sydney, New Zealand bull, Branston Royal Democrat. Then more later years, we bought a number of Frisian bulls from New Zealand. I went over there with a breeder that was then on our bull selection committee, Jack Ward. He was also president of the Frisian Association. And we went over to New Zealand twice and bought bulls.
And I'll just slow you down. When you say you bought bulls, tell us what that is. You go and go to us, like...
We go to a stud, we look at...
What are you looking for?
We're looking for, in the bull, we'll say sound structure, but we're more interested in the parentage. So we're looking at the cows, could be half-sisters, there could be a number of in the female line to look at. to make sure they were A, good producers, B, soundly structured, particularly as far as feet and legs, udder, be of good breed type. That was the thing to watch for, was the quality of the stock. And that's why we had a breed represented on the bull selection committee. We also had a Illawarra breeder, Ron Dudgeon from up in the Hunter Valley. Usually took him if we had some Illawarras to look at. But the Illawarras being Australian, there was no importation involved. But we had some very good bulls. There was Tabagong Beauty's Design, Sunnyview Princess Hope. We brought him down from Queensland. River Oaks Democrat was another bull that in the Illawarra breeds that left a mark.
There's quite a selection of breeds there, aren't there?
Yeah.
So it's not just, is it all about milk production? What else are you looking for? Is this what it's about, or is it about multiple things?
Well, we're looking at milk production. Quite some time ago, there were areas, such as the far north coast, were fairly dominated by Jerseys because of their higher milk quality.
The butterfat.
Yeah, the butterfat. So in this area here, there were some Jersey studs. There was one out here at Jasper's Brush, one out at Tooladjua that I remember vividly.
Can you remember the names of the people that had the studs?
The one out at Jasper's Brush was Lindsay Cochrane, and the one out at Tooladjua was John Webb. Neither of those studs are operating now. See, when I came to Berry, factory had about 100 and plus suppliers of milk. Now they have got none. So the dairy industry has changed dramatically. And that, of course, has had an effect on artificial breeding.
It's a very different landscape to what you're seeing today, because you would have seen many silos in the fields.
Well, probably the thing back then was that there was dairy farms with probably 70 to 100, 70 to 90 odd milking cows, initially using a bull breeding them, and then progressively we had to convert them over, some very successfully, some not so successfully, to use artificial breeding.
Can I ask when that was started to happen here, like when AI started to be implemented?
Yeah, you'd say about 1958, early, mid-50s, 58, artificial breeding started to progressively get used. Of course, we had the inseminators here, and the dairy farmers would ring up in the morning and they'd duly go out on their run and do their inseminations, and then we progressed to up onto the tablelands, Moss Vale. The Hunter Valley was already going due to the Aberdeen Centre. Then progressively we moved inseminators into other spots such as Grafton, Wollongbar. Most of the modern major dairies would have one or two inseminators who would take their calls, go out and inseminate the cows.
So they were on the road, some of these guys. The semen is sitting in, how do you keep it alive?
Well, back then, initially, it was liquid semen, and it was only good for about 3 days, held with dry ice. A bit later, we introduced glass ampules, which were fairly effective in that they could be carried in liquid nitrogen and stored for weeks, months, years, provided you kept the liquid nitrogen up. To use the glass ampoule, you had to break the top off it, then extract the semen out of the glass ampoule into a glass pipette and inseminate the cow. More lately, we introduced the straw, which was, I think, basically a French development, but it was an ideal thing that could be stored in liquid nitrogen, and the inseminator would just take the straw out of the liquid nitrogen, thaw it, put it in his pipette, inseminate the cow, so there was a lot less handling of the semen.
Did that increase success rate?
I think probably it improved the conception rate. Semen wasn't being handled as much, and in liquid nitrogen you had a constant temperature, whereas back with the old dry ice, somebody only had to be a little bit tardy and there wasn't enough dry ice to maintain it at the required or preferred temperature.
How expensive were the bulls to purchase?
They varied. Back originally, we would probably somewhere around about $1,000. In more recent years, around about 1970s, when we were selecting cows to breed to certain bulls, we'd go out and see the farmer, inspect the cow and its relative relations, and then sign a contract with him to breed that cow to Bull A. We would basically set a price at the time. And then we altered that a bit later on by taking a contract, but when the bull was proved successful and used more extensively, the owner or the breeder of the bull got paid a royalty. So if the bull was very good, he got a lot more money than just the value of the bull.
What about how much were farmers paying for their cows to be inseminated?
It wasn't very expensive, but I can't give you an exact figure, not being an inseminator, but it wouldn't have been much more than a few dollars.
Was there a big local demand?
The demand, you mean the demand for AI?
Yes.
Well, it just progressed as they had, we'll say, more selection of bulls. Initially, they were bulls that looked good, had fairly good parentage, not necessarily outstanding themselves. So around about the 1970s, 80s, they started doing the Australian breeding value, which was calculated on the milk production of the daughters of a bull. So we set up a sire evaluation plan, and we were bringing in young bulls. As soon as they were able to produce usable semen, we had herds that were cooperating and breeding their cows to these young bulls. So eventually we had the daughters of these young bulls assessed on milk production. It was decided which were the better ones and the not so good. So some got culled on their performance, others got put into more broader use because of their performance.
How did you keep your records?
Well, the Department of Agriculture provided a herd recording service. They had herd recording personnel situated in various districts, and they would, for instance, go to herd A today, get all the milk records out of those cows that were milked that day, and then tomorrow they'd be at herd B. So around about every month they would register their milk production figures. They were calculated to determine which bulls were superior to another bull.
The science was getting more refined to production.
Production and, of course, conformation.
Yes.
You've got to keep the conformation. I mean, if...
Like any animal, prized animal, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if they haven't got good udder and good teat placement for modern milking machines, they're a problem. So anything that is not breeding good quality conformation is out too.
Graham Park moved to a new facility and there's quite a few bull yards there. Where was the new facility? You probably mentioned it, but what road was it on?
Well, it's actually on the Princes Highway, about a mile south of Berry. And
a mile south. So what's it near there? What side of the road?
Well, it's on
the high road.
The western side, the mountain side.
Yes.
186 acres, and it's subdivided, or there's a road goes up the centre of it, Schofields Lane.
It was quite a big operation by the look of things.
Oh yes, it was a new innovation, because artificial stock breeding centres up till then had been Hunter Valley one, Glenfield fiddled around for a while, and the one here at Department of Ag at Berry was taken over by the Milk Board, and this was developed. It amazes me. I think that was built in about 2 years, quick building. At the same time, Victoria started a centre down there, but theirs was a different structure to here. This was we'll call it a semi-government owned. Victorian was set up as a cooperative. In more later years, 2 members of our staff out here left, and one set up a centre at Bundanoon, at that stage specialising more in beef cattle, and another one set up a centre down at Tongala in Victoria, and that was predominantly dairy bulls down there. The Department of Agriculture started one at Wacol in Brisbane, and about the same time that Graham Park closed down, the Wacol one closed down.
You were training farmers to AI as well. You ran training courses?
Yes, that would have been around about the 1970s, the first training of farmers, and that was started by a chap that went down to the Tongala Centre, and he very successfully got farmers to be trained and then carry out their own inseminations, which of course gave them a leg in with their semen versus our semen. So then we had to start training. I think probably we trained people from the Victorian border to the Queensland border, and I'd say probably by about the late 1980s there would have been 3,000 or more we would have trained, and most of them turned out fairly successful with their breeding their own cattle. But then that started to have an effect on artificial centres, because they could then, rather than relying on an inseminator to bring the semen, they could go to any centre and buy whatever semen they wanted. Semen started to become available from Canada and America, which previously it hadn't been. Canadian bulls that I mentioned earlier soon made a demand for Canadian and American semen, so then that started to delete the amount of semen that was used in Australian centres. Artificial breeding bulls were mainly from Canada. Canadian ones were the more successful.
You mentioned Hugh Havilah, agronomist, working on pastures. He was a person employed by the AI Centre?
No, he was employed by the Department of Agriculture.
That's right.
There was he and another agronomist, and they had a couple of field assistants, and they would go out and set up trials with certain types of grass and so forth, just to improve the forage that was available to the milking cow.
How important was their work?
Oh, well, really it was fairly important, because back in the earlier days, pasture in this area was predominantly paspalum. Palum dilatatum is the correct word for it. More seasonal grass. A certain period of the year it'd go to seed and get ergot on the seed, which made the cows sticky, and so then they were trying to get more ryegrass and kikuyu. The ryegrass was probably the better milking grass, but the kikuyu just went 12 months of the year. It didn't tally off. That's what Hugh and his staff were doing, was getting the better quality pastures with clovers and so forth mixed in with them.
Because that would have surely linked in with the breeding as well. Did feed play a big role?
Well, I think you could say yes, because I can think of one dairy farm which I won't name, but it was basically old tusky Parramatta grass. Poor old cows were flat out surviving on it. So it was that sort of pasture that he was endeavouring to get farmers to switch over to the better quality, more nutrient-rich pastures, and then they would produce more milk off it. That was all the agronomy side.
Was that part of your facility?
They started off down where the original AI Centre was, then eventually moved over to Graham Park. It's still there, it's still being used as a Department of Agriculture section.
What was your section? Where did you work?
Well, basically the office.
In the admin block?
Yeah.
Where were you living?
Here.
So here is Victoria Street
and this house.
in this house. So Berry's changed a bit, hasn't it?
Oh, drastically.
What was it like when you arrived here? What did you think of the place?
Well, Barry back then was in 1965 and up for some years later was very community minded. If there was somebody, successful football coach and had a thing at the School of Arts, the place would be packed. If Kevin Robinson, who in those days was very successful with trotters, if he had big success, there'd be a thing at the School of Arts. That sort of happening has disappeared. Yeah, well, originally there's on the other side of the railway line opposite the old dairy factory, that's where the original racecourse was. And Berry has got a longer railway station than such Gerringong and so forth, because they used to bring trains in from Sydney to the races, and they had to have long stations to accommodate the carriages. I don't know when that stopped being used, to be honest. After that, the only thing that happened was trotting races at the Berry shows.
Thinking about transporting bulls from New Zealand and Canada.
The ones from Canada, I think, were shipped over. More recent ones from New Zealand were flown over.
How were they collected in a truck?
The Nelson family in Kangaroo Valley, Dick and his son Ron, used to do all our bull carting for us, and they were amazing stock transporters. I'd send Ron off down Victoria picking up bulls, and I remember on one occasion he rang me from Bairnsdale to say he would be here at such and such an hour. And he was here within about 10 minutes of it. And in the hundreds of bulls that they carted over the years, I don't remember one being injured. They were very, very careful drivers, and we used to move bulls from here up to the Aberdeen Centre and bulls from the Aberdeen Centre down here for a period, and they used to do that too. They'd take a load up and bring a load back. We cut that out after a few years and then closed Aberdeen down and concentrated on here. The only other thing would be hay suppliers, hay and concentrate feed suppliers. We put in a silo thing to hold the concentrates. Hold, I suppose, about 20 tonne, I would say. And then we had the two hay sheds. They were used initially for local hay, which was old paspalum hay. So I got more involved in the feeding of the bulls, got a contractor to supply our concentrate food, and I got a carrier from down near Wagga to buy good quality pasture hay and lucerne hay. His surname was Meyer, that's John Meyer, I think it was. Big problem was that the two hay sheds were put in to cater for a tabletop truck, and he used to come with a semi-trailer. But he could back in from Schofields Lane, down the lane to the hay sheds in. He was brilliant. Designer Graham Park, all the bulls were led from the yard down to the collecting yard at the main building. That was a time-consuming and, to a degree, dangerous occupation. And I did a trip to New Zealand, but I went to both the centres over there and found they had this beautiful trailer that tip it down the back, walk the bull up onto it, flatten it off. When they got to the collecting area, they'd tip the front down and walk the bull off. So I got one made and we used that out here, and that got the time factor cut in big portions and the safety for the farm staff leading the bulls.
Any bad accidents happen there with the bulls?
No, fortunately there wasn't. There was one of the old inseminators who was a character in his own right. There was escape hatches, but being designed by an architect, they were metal. And he was one day had to take evasive actions, and the bull basically hit his knee into this escape thing and peel the skin back off his knee. And I said to him, well, come on, I'll run you over to the hospital. Oh, no, take me up to the workshop. Take him up to the workshop. What did he do? Poured some kerosene over it. Then some Stockholm tar. Within a couple of weeks, it was as good as gold.
Do you remember his name?
Yeah, Ernie Staples. Ernie, when he was an inseminator, the inseminators drove the VW bug, and he had come back with a dent in it, and he'd panel beat it out, but the original dent was better than his panel beating. When he retired, he lived out at Giroa. He used to go along the frontage there and get seaweed for his garden. On one occasion, somebody rang and said that he'd been found dead on the beach. So Bernie Doyle, who was then the director out there, and myself went out. It wasn't Ernie. He was a character and a half. Took on riding the mower to mow our front lawn, and you couldn't look out your window. You did not know whether he had a dark shirt on or whether he had no shirt on. His skin was like very black. He came to work one morning, and if he got into the lunchroom first and made the tea, it was as strong as strong. He came in one morning, and he was a collector of, had quite an aviary of birds, and a bird he had got from somewhere at some fairly big price. He said, I went up there this morning and here was this bird dead, he said, with its 4 feet in the air.
Did you do much socialising together?
Yeah, we used to always have a fairly good Christmas get-together.
So your Christmas parties would be at the AI Centre?
Yeah, there was a big car park area, and we used to have a barbecue in there and a few beers and so forth.
Was it mainly men working there? Was it a pretty masculine place?
We had, usually there were 2 or 3 women, one the exchange, one doing some clerical work and one doing some laboratory work. One that we had on the exchange, it was the old plug-in type. She had a name all over the country of being the best telephonist they had ever dealt with. She was brilliant.
And what was her name?
Norma Wolford.
Was she a local person?
I don't know what stage she and her husband moved here, but her son lives down here in Princess Street.
So Glenfield was Department of Agriculture, was it?
Yeah, that was the veterinary research station.
That's right.
It eventually moved out to Camden. Again, I think a very silly departmental move, because the one at Glenfield, you had Hurlston Agricultural High School there, on the other side of the road, veterinary research station. It was a fairly good combination. But then they moved out to the Elizabeth MacArthur Research, Camden, Menangle probably, not that far from the Rotalactor actually. Now being sort of encroached on with development and so forth. I can't remember what year it was, but I was offered the job of moving up there to be livestock coordinator was the title up there. I was there for about 2 years. I eventually decided it didn't suit because we had lost a son here. I don't think wife Colleen was going to handle things if I was up there during the week and only here at weekends, so I gave that away. And
how long were you with Berry for?
I started there in October 65. I took over managing in, I think it was 1980. The director, Bernie Doyle, he was a veterinary surgeon. He got moved to Sydney and looked after quarantine and such like. We used government vets who were stationed at Kiama to do our veterinary work. And then when we went under the Department of Agriculture, we couldn't use department vets, so we were using the private vets down here, Jeff Manning and Jeff Scarlett, who were both very good vets. So that was the only time we used private vets.
What were some of the biggest changes you saw in the AI industry? Just broadly, it's a big question. But
The biggest changes were the processing of semen from liquid to frozen. With the liquid, you'd collect it today, dilute it, and then ship it out in thermoses, really, to the inseminators, but you couldn't store any. And then when we eventually switched over to using the glass ampoules, we got big liquid nitrogen storage tanks, and as soon as it was processed and frozen, it'd go into the storage. But the ampoules, as I mentioned before, were not as easy to inseminate with, and then we switched over to the straws. And one of the advantages of the straws was you had a different coloured straw for each breed, whereas with the ampoules they were all glass, and you had to get the exact ampoule and read what was printed on it, whereas with the straws you could lift the lid and look, and there was we'll say the red straws. Right, that's the semen I want of a Frisian bull.
Providing you weren't colour blind.
Yes, it's a good point.
That might have happened.
Oh yes, I'm just trying to think how we did have one fellow who was colour blind. But somehow or other he seemed to be able to overcome it fairly successfully. The chap that handled the storage of semen, Stuart Brandon, he now lives over at Far Meadow Bomaderry. He was very, very efficient in handling semen, putting it into liquid nitrogen, out of liquid nitrogen, into containers to ship off and so forth. His hands, I think, must have ended up like loaves of bread.
Does that mean big?
Well, big but also hard from burning with the liquid nitrogen.
Oh, yes.
Because as you know, liquid nitrogen is fairly low temperature. I think it's about 197, I think, from memory. But he was very brilliant at his job.
How big was the reach? How far did your AI get distributed?
Well, basically, Australia-wide in the end, they had a artificial breeding board in Western Australia, but all they did was acquire semen from the likes of us, take it over there and inseminate it out, so they had no bulls, etc. So semen was Australia-wide. I don't actually recall any going to Northern Territory, but I could be wrong there. We sent some to Indonesia on one occasion, some to Norfolk Island and Lord Howe Island, a small bit of particularly the Illawarras to New Zealand. Berry was helped by Graham Park. We had 4 inseminators working. We had 3 farm staff. They all lived locally. And then office-wise, well, we had 3 ladies, one fellow 2 in the office, 2 in the lab, all lived locally. So, and of course, over the years, the number of visitors we used to get out there. Bill Gill used to have the coach company, and he used to bring people from America. He'd bring coach loads out there, and they would all leave $1 or 2 in Berry as they went by. Farmer groups used to use Berry for farmer meetings, local. Groups used to come from other parts and individuals, and it helped Berry a lot financially.
What for you working there? What did you get out of it? What did you enjoy the most?
I probably enjoyed the fact that I was both office and outside.
You must have had a bit of fun on those trips. Have you got any funny bull stories or anything that was unusual?
Not really. They were all very sane and sober.
Yeah.
The only funny one I can think of was when we were in Queensland with Fred McIntosh. We called in and saw an Ayrshire breeder. We weren't really looking at bulls at his place, but he was a long-time friend of Fred McIntosh. And when we were leaving there, it was on dusk. And I said, right, and you know where to go from here, Mr. McIntosh, do you? Oh, yes. Turn left, turn left, turn left. We're back where we started. And we stopped in a motel at Wagga one night, and he cursed the pillow all night. Next morning, I don't know what made me, but I tried a door and we opened into another one. Much better pillow. That's what I liked, was the mixture of clerical and outside.
In the field.
Met a lot of very nice people. We met some strange people, some with different lifestyles.
What did you wear? Wear a hat?
Oh, yeah. Always wore a hat and always wore a tie.
And a kuba or something?
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about meeting your wife and...
Right. Well, I met my wife at Dapto at a Masonic dance. I was working in Sydney at that stage, and I'd come down weekends, spend some time with Mum and Dad on the farm and go to the Masonic dance, and that's where I met her. And then when I don't know how long that went on for, but then I got moved to Melbourne. There were a number of us they selected for undergoing training, and I spent time in Melbourne, Shepparton, Wangaratta, Sydney, Brisbane, Rockhampton, Springshaw, Barcaldine, Longreach, and then back to Sydney. All that time, basically, we were just kept contact by writing letters. And when I'd have a holiday, I'd head there. So really our courting days were on paper.
What year did you marry? And where?
We married in 1960 at Cogra, Church of England there.
Yeah.
The minister there had been minister at Dapto, and we knew him well, so we made use of him at Cogra.
And what was your wife's full name?
Colleen Margaret Tully.
What year was she born?
1937.
And she's recently passed, unfortunately.
Yes, last June.
So June 24.
Strange thing is I met her at a Masonic dance. She passed away at a Masonic village.
She was down there in Berry, was she?
Yeah, she had 15 months down there. I cared for her here from 2016, and then about, I can't remember the exact year, but about 2018, I got aged care, used Anglicare on the recommendation of a friend, and I had ladies come in and care for her between 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock of an afternoon, and then I'd take over from then through the night to morning. Got to the stage of I just couldn't handle it.
It's a big role.
Oh, a massive role, but I used to take her out for a walk every day, and we were down at Camp Quality, and I don't know what caused it, but anyway, she fell and broke her left hip. She basically didn't walk since then. When she was in hospital in Nowra, I couldn't get the doctor to get her more care. I couldn't get her moved over to the Berry Hospital where I could have got more walking care. So she really never got walking again. So I used to take her around in a wheelchair, and then I got a motorised wheelchair and took her around in that, but it just got to the stage in March. I had to put her in the Masonic village, and they were brilliant. Outstanding thing down there is the carers they've got from Fiji, India, various places. They are brilliant. Apparently about 30,000 in Australia.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're always so happy singing.
Yeah. And when I go down there, which I go down about every couple of weeks, two of the ones that did the day part of Colleen's, Monday to Thursday, they were brilliant. And I go down and see them, and I catch up with any of the Islander girls that are on. They're always so happy to see you, give you the greatest cuddle possible. I've just about educated most of them now, because I'd say to them, "How are you?" And they'd say, "Good." And I'd say, "No, you're well. You're not good." So now I go down and I say, "How are you?" "Well."
You have children?
Yeah, we had 3 sons. Our third son we lost with a cerebral hemorrhage about 1990, I think.
What's his name?
Brian.
And what about your other 2 sons? What are their names?
Rodney's a greenkeeper, head greenkeeper at Bomaderry and Berry bowling clubs, and lives at Gerringong. And Graham, our second son, lives up in Ford Street off Kangaroo Valley Road there. Everybody must have their Ford name now because they haven't pinched one for ages. They used to take the Ford off. And now he's retired up there now. And he and his lovely wife, Debbie, turned us into great-grandparents on the 1st of January.
Well, that's something to live for, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And they have called him Cooper Tully, Colleen's surname as his second name.
And you were a member of the Berry Bowling Club, were you?
Yes, up until I had to give more service to Colleen.
How long was your membership there?
Oh, I joined there in, I think, about 2000 or thereabouts.
What sort of bowler were you?
I was president for about 5 or 6 years. I was a mediocre bowler.
That brings us to the end of the episode. Thanks, David. I really enjoyed engaging David. It was a very hot day when we did the recording, and I had to get him to turn the air conditioning off, so you cannot believe how hot it was for us. But we got there. Next episode, episode 10, is the final episode for this season. I'll bring it to you in a few weeks. I'll have my website hosting this episode with a couple of photos in a few days. Okay, until then, theresesweeney.com.au is my website. If you've got an inquiry or anything to add, there's a form there. You can fill that in and get it to me. Okay. Ciao.